Or she wants seconds.
Entirely possible, though she goes back alone, so it doesn't reflect well on Sam's performance.
Might be a wink.
Right, meet me there. Could be. Could be.
In closing, I wanted to talk about the end of the episode a little bit and
Sure.
go back to this thing about sound. You mentioned it before about that transition. You go from the Oval Office into this room where these guys are trying to still riff on the Correspondence Dinner speech. And there's that brief interlude, not a pause, but, you know, a beat where you're in between the two doors and that the sound is very, very quiet. And then you walk into this room and immediately it's like this cacophonous thing of all the guys talking, everybody's yelling, you sit down, you get thrown the ball. And then I like the Godfather shot. You see them, Leo closes the door on the world outside of the Oval Office. And then we get this flental of what could be the sound of the door closing. They do this really neat thing where he's closing the door and it cuts to black. And based on the timing of how he's moving the door, you hear this thing that should be like ka-dunk,
Engage.
but it actually ends up being the sound of the rubber ball once more. And it's revealed because the last thing you hear is the Spalding hitting Toby's hand, like getting caught.
Oh, I didn't notice that, but I will say something about the end. First of all, it was a bit of an anticlimax, the last scene with the president. It didn't have the emotional impact that I think might have been appropriate, in that he apologizes, and I kind of don't know what to do, and I say, thank you, Mr. President. But the impact of it hits Toby outside. He takes a minute and then crosses into the hallway. And then he comes in, sits down, that's the cacophony hits in the ball, and then it pans up and you see the door close.
Yeah.
And now I think, this is my opinion, that it should have been reversed because the secret's already out. The cacophony and everyone else who's eventually soon going to learn about this, to me, was the point.
Right.
And not what's going on in the Oval Office, because that's already out.
Yeah, I know what you mean about the anticlimax of that final scene, but I like it in a way because Bartlett gives you the apology that he announces his intention to deny you. And it's a little bit of a, so what? I mean, that's a little bit of an interpersonal thing, but it doesn't address any of the problems that you've foreseen, right? Nothing changes. And they still have a door to close, they think, on it, or a hope, but...
Right.
But that's exactly why I think the reverse should have happened, because nothing changes except the rest of the staff has got to find out about it any second now, you know.
Thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about this episode.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
We're going to take a little break, and then coming up after the break, we're going to talk to Emily Proctor some more about her thoughts on 17 People. The West Wing Weekly is sponsored by Audible. Audible gives you an unmatched selection of audiobooks and original spoken audio content. You can get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial at audible.com/westwing.
And if I can step in here and throw out a recommendation, Rishi, I'm currently listening with my son to Hero of the Empire, The Boer War, A Daring Escape, and the Making of Winston Churchill by Candace Millard, one of my favorite history writers, and hat tip to Simon Vance, incredible narrator. And it's just an amazingly gripping, exciting, adventurous story that I didn't know very much about. The young Winston Churchill working as a war correspondent and a jailbreak, and it's just a whole sort of area of history I didn't know much about, and it's just amazingly exciting.
And probably a great book for fans of the West Wing.
I'm quite sure our listeners would enjoy it.
So go sign up for a 30-day free trial and download an audiobook of your choice, like Hero of the Empire or anything you want, at audible.com/westwing.
That's audible.com/westwing. Do it now. Support for The West Wing Weekly comes from Squarespace. If you've ever been on our website, thewestwingweekly.com, then you've already seen how we use Squarespace.
Squarespace is used by a wide range of creative individuals and businesses, from musicians to designers to artists, restaurants, and more. So make your next move with a beautiful website from Squarespace.
Their award-winning templates are the most beautiful way to present your ideas online. So for a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, visit squarespace.com/westwing.
That's squarespace.com/westwing. And now back to the show. Now we're joined again by Emily Proctor to talk more about Ainsley Hayes in 17 People. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for coming back.
I'm so excited to be back, you guys.
Now that you're returning, you're officially a friend of the podcast.
Nice.
So do you remember this episode? Do you remember shooting it?
Well, okay, here's the thing that this forces me to do is that I go back and I watch it and just am instantly filled with such incredible nostalgia. I do, in watching this episode, wish I had prepared many things differently in terms of the acting style. Like, there's so much fun humor, and there's so many back and forths with Rob, Sam, and there's so many personal things I remember about being on set for this one. And then again, I just feel like there was just so much wonderful opportunity, just like, here, set it up and hit it, set it up and hit it, set it up and hit it. And
Emily, that's what you do.
yeah, I mean, but he set me up for it. But I love Toby's stillness. You know, it's like just admiring someone else's style, really, I think.
But what do you mean when you say you wish you had prepared things differently or executed differently? Is there a specific?
Gosh, there are so many of those group scene moments where I thought, gosh, if I had just taken a moment to be still, if I hadn't have been doing such a quick, fast tap dance. In this episode, it was so neat because Toby is so still. In that opening when he's throwing the ball and catching it and throwing the ball and catching it, and he's thinking it over, to me felt so human. And then when I show up, it feels like a bit more of a musical. It's like da 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 da.
That's actually something I can very much identify with then. I often do have the same feeling on West Wing and other things I've done for Aaron, where I sometimes see them afterwards and think, oh, I probably could have breathed. I might have taken a pause there. Like, when you're doing it, the quintessence of his writing is this fast-paced dialogue, heavy speeches, and you feel you got to kind of rat-a-tat-tat it. And sometimes I forget how powerful it is when you pause again. And I see it in some of the other actors, and I think, oh, maybe I could come at this from a different direction.
Right? You know, like a more stable direction. You know, and then there's just like the stillness of Toby. But then at the end, when he walks into all of it in the final scene, and there is that sort of like rat-a-tat-tat and chaos and like what seemed to be jarring humor, when he sits into it, it makes his stillness so delicious and just makes so much sense. It's so juicy.
I was wondering if you could give us your take on the Ainsley-Sam dynamic. Did you feel like you played it with a particular take on their chemistry and what the subtext of their relationship might or might not be?
Well, what I can tell you about this particular episode is that Rob and I both got in trouble. We were working on the scene in the basement, and I don't think we'd seen Aaron the whole episode, and he came down to the basement, and he was like, would you two just stop flirting with each other?
You're forcing my hand as a writer.
Right? And he just yelled at us, and I remember thinking, like, it's not my fault. You can't put me as Ainsley in a room with Sam Seaborn and Rob Lowe and not expect me to flirt, because Rob Lowe, I said it the last time, is hands down one of the best flirts ever. He just is. You cannot be in a room with him, and I don't know, Josh, if this is your experience, but
I
you can't be in a room with him and not flirt with him. You can't do it. It is impossible. And I said to Aaron, I said, well, then stop writing scenes where we're flirting with each other. And I remember he was like, oh.
That's amazing, because I can't imagine that those scenes were written with any other intention in mind than them being incredibly flirty.
Right.
But that's incredible. And now I'm going to have to try and rewatch it or reread the...
You know, Emily, apparently there is a fairly sizable group among the fandom that thinks that something happened down there with you and Sam, that there's some lost time to account for.
Oh, God, yes, absolutely. Let's encourage that.
All right, we can do that.
The theory is that when Sam comes back and he says, I spilled coffee, and then I went and got more, and we spilled coffee many, many times, everyone's like, oh, spilling coffee, that means, we all know what that means.
Well, it's so funny. I heard that today, and I kind of heard it for the first time, and I thought, what does that mean? Well, Ainsley locked me out of that, but it sounds delightful. Can I tell you the other thing I remember about that episode? I remember sitting there, and he turns to me and he's like, "You have no idea what I would give to be in your shoes. You're only here part-time. You recur." He's like, "It's the best. I wish I were only here part-time. This is hell." And I remember him saying that to me, and how it has stayed with me. And then I remember being on CSI Miami and looking at those recurring characters and thinking, "You have no idea what I would give to be in your shoes right now. This is hell."
Oh, that's awesome.
I have one other question, which going back to the ERA discussion. It's interesting to me, when you would get a script, if I'm understanding correctly, you would bump on something if it didn't sort of feel like something in line with your beliefs or your views? Or, I mean, is that a first consideration?
No, I think it's the only time in acting it's ever happened to me was that episode.
It just felt...
Yes. I mean, I am just a real feminist. And it's the only time I have ever been asked, I think, to take a position with a role, and it felt very personal to me. It was really hard. And I remember, as I'm walking down the hall in that scene, I don't know if you guys remember that television show Zoom.
Are you kidding? 021.
But as I'm walking down to go into the cafeteria with Sam, I do this kind of like wrist twist thing that I learned off of Zoom. And it got caught on camera, but I was trying to sort of work myself from a very innocent part of myself into being okay with making this argument. And I didn't realize that it had shown up on camera because I don't normally watch things that I've done. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's in there. I'm wearing this like purple hair ribbon, and I'm like doing the thing from Zoom, and I'm like, tee-hee, who needs ERA? And it really surprised me, the end, Ainsley's argument at the end, because Aaron just wrote it so beautifully that it made sense to even as myself. I was having a very meta moment. It's like me arguing with myself why I did that, and then it worked out.
Yeah, in the end, she comes off as anti-ERA, certainly, but not anti-feminist, I think, in the way he wrote it and you played it.
She came across as utterly feminist, which I just loved.
I agree.
And before we get off the Zoom thing, the things I learned from Zoom were 02134 was their zip code. Send it to Zoom.
02134.
Send it to Zoom. And I learned a little bit of ubby-dubby, which is the made-up language they spoke.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
What show is this?
Zoom. Where did you grow up, Rishi? Oh, maybe it's more of a when did you grow up, Rishi?
I've never heard of it.
Habai frabens, tubba-dubbies, wubba-thubba, rubba-bubba. That's all I ever learned how to say. Hi, friends. Today's weather report.
God, that makes me so happy.
I wanted to be a Zoom kid. I have to go back and watch it now. Look at your wrist thing.
Yeah, it was really weird. I was like, oh my God, that's in there.
That's awesome.
The other thing I would say is I remember like this sort of long tracking shot of Donna and the flowers through the sort of work pen. And I remember teasing Don, the Steadicam operator. I was like, Don got new Steadicam shoes. And like I can hear him laughing as that shot is happening. That's the other thing I remember about the episode. And I think the Sam Ainsley flirting happened because it is impossible not to flirt with Rob Lowe. I really think that's just what happened. Like he just showed up and Emily couldn't get out of Ainsley's way long enough to stop flirting. It was just too fun. How could you not?
We had Rob Lowe on the podcast recently, and everybody has been tweeting at me, congratulating me for not making a comment about how good looking he was.
Did you not flirt with him?
Get through the entire interview without saying anything about how handsome he is.
Did you not flirt with him, even with your eyes a tiny bit?
I could not see him. We were just doing it over the phone, so that helped.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe he should be a cabinet appointee, like American flirt. Just go to different countries and smooth things over. It's possible.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you for having me back. I had such a good time, and it's so nice to talk about the West Wing.
Thanks to all of you listening for joining us as well. We hope you'll join us next time. If you want to discuss this episode with us or with other West Wing Weekly listeners, you can leave a comment on our website, thewestwingweekly.com, or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thewestwingweekly.
They can tweet me this time, and I will respond.
That's right. Richard is at Richard_Schiff. Josh is at Josh Molina. I'm at Rishi Hirway, and our show is at West Wing Weekly.
We also want to thank our multitude of great guests today. You can follow them as well. Emily Proctor is at Emily Proctor. Rebecca Walker is at Rebecca Walker. You can tweet to Jessica Neuwirth of the ERA Coalition at ERA Coalition. And John White is at John White Briefly. And you can see his current work at americanscraps.com. It's a site where he transforms documents from the National Archives about American history into comic strips. It's very cool, and you should definitely check it out. That's americanscraps.com. You can buy a lapel pin at westwingweekly.com/merch.
That's right. The West Wing Weekly is a proud member of the Radiotopia Network from PRX, a curated network of extraordinary cutting-edge shows. You should check out all the shows at radiotopia.fm.
I love that the sign-off is equal length to the actual show.
Exactly. The West Wing Weekly is produced by Josh and myself, along with Zach McNeese and Margaret Miller.
Okay.
Okay.
What's next?
Radiotopia from PRX.
Enemy cruiser detected.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser. Off to a great start.